There is this very specific feeling that happens on a Monday morning.
Oh, yeah. I know exactly where you're going with this.
Right. Like you walk into your office, maybe you sit down at your desk, or, perhaps you just log into a video call for work or school.
Yeah, you've got your cup of coffee in your hand. You're just trying to wake up.
Exactly. You're barely awake. And then someone looks right at you, smiles, and asks a very simple, everyday question. How was your weekend?
Ah, yes. It is like the ultimate Monday morning ritual. I mean, it happens everywhere, in almost every culture around the world.
It really does. But for a lot of us, and especially if you are actively learning English, that simple, friendly question doesn't feel friendly at all.
No, not at all. It feels like a trap.
Totally. It suddenly feels like this massive, terrifying test.
Yeah.
Your heart beats a little faster. Your mind just, it goes completely blank.
Which is so frustrating because you know exactly what you did on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean, you lived it.
Right. You were there. But finding the right English words, putting them in the right order, and making your story sound interesting to the other person, that is the incredibly hard part.
And the pressure is so real. When that question is asked, your brain actually experiences this tiny moment of panic. A tiny fight or flight response, really.
Wow. Fight or flight over a weekend question.
Yeah, because you want to share your life and you want to connect with your colleague or your classmate. But you're also worried about making grammar mistakes.
Oh, for sure. Or you're worried about talking for 10 minutes and just completely boring the other person.
Exactly. You need a simple, clear, and friendly formula to tell your story.
And that is exactly why we are here today. Because when your mind goes blank, you need a formula. So, welcome to today's deep dive.
Yes, and we have some fantastic source material to unpack for you today.
We really do. Today we are dissecting a brilliant masterclass in how to build that exact formula. We're looking at transcripts from a 3-part audio series called English Coffee Break.
Specifically, we're looking at episodes 1, 2, and 3.
Right. And we're going to look closely at this conversation between 2 characters in the source, Emily and Paul, who are sharing their weekend stories.
And our mission today is to figure out exactly how this source uses these 2 characters to teach English learners the perfect vocabulary, grammar, and really the mindset for sharing their stories.
Absolutely. So whether you are studying English right now and want to improve your speaking confidence, or, you just want to be a better storyteller on Monday mornings, this deep dive is entirely for you.
We're going to slow right down. We're going to unpack exactly how Emily and Paul build their stories step by step.
Yeah, we'll look at the psychology behind why they choose certain specific words, how they manage the rhythm of their conversation, and how you can borrow their simple structure.
So you can sound confident, fluent, and relaxed. And we're going to keep our pace nice and steady today, focusing entirely on clear, everyday language that you can use immediately.
I love that. So let's jump right into part 1 of the source text, which focuses entirely on Saturday.
Let's do it.
When we look at how Emily and Paul describe their Saturdays, we see this massive contrast. It is almost like they live in 2 different worlds.
They really do. The source deliberately contrasts 2 very different types of days to teach contrasting vocabulary. We have Emily's active Saturday and Paul's productive Saturday.
That contrast is just a phenomenal teaching tool, isn't it?
It is. By placing these 2 days side by side, we can clearly see the difference in energy. So let's start with Emily. Emily tells Paul she had an active Saturday.
Okay, let's hear the details.
She says she woke up at 7 a.m., she went hiking with her friends on a mountain for 3 hours, and then they had a beautiful picnic lunch with chicken sandwiches.
See, here is where it gets really interesting for me. Emily could have taken the easy road here.
What do you mean by the easy road?
Well, she could have just said, I went outside, or, I was active, or I spent time with friends.
Right, yeah, those sentences are grammatically perfect.
Exactly. But she doesn't do that. She gives us these highly specific details. She gives us the exact time, which is 7:01 a.m. She gives us the exact duration, 3 hours.
And she tells us exactly what food she ate. Chicken sandwiches.
Yes. So my question is, why is that level of detail so crucial for someone learning a language?
Because, simply put, specific details do the heavy lifting for the listener's brain.
Oh, that makes sense.
Think about what happens when you're learning English. It is so tempting to rely on general, safe words like, I had fun, I ate food, I went out.
Yeah, because those words are easy to remember. You don't have to look them up.
True, but general words create zero connection. They're basically invisible. If Emily says, I eat food, the listener's brain has to work hard to imagine what that food might be.
It's too vague.
Exactly. But when Emily says 7:00 a.m., Immediately, you and I feel that crisp early morning energy. We know what 7 a.m. feels like.
Right. I mean, you have to actively set an alarm for 7 a.m. on a Saturday. That shows some serious intention.
It really does. And when she says 3 hours on a mountain, we instantly understand the physical effort.
Yeah, we feel the sweat. We feel the accomplishment.
Exactly. And then the chicken sandwiches is just this perfect finishing touch. It's a simple, everyday food, but it makes the picnic feel real.
You can visually picture them, right?
Yeah.
Sitting on the grass, opening their bags, and eating those sandwiches.
Specificity is the ultimate secret to sounding fluent. You really don't need big, complicated, university-level words to sound fluent. You just need specific, simple words.
It's just like painting, you know?
Oh, how so?
Well, if you want to paint a beautiful landscape, you don't need a palette of 100 different complex colors. You just need a few basic colors placed in exactly the right spots.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, you paint the mountain, you paint the 7.0 a.m. sunrise, and you paint the sandwich.
Perfect.
And speaking of specific words, let's talk about the word Emily uses to describe how her body felt after this 3-hour mountain hike.
Ah, yes. The source really highlights this one.
Paul asks her if she was tired. And Emily doesn't just say yes. She says, I was exhausted.
Exhausted. This is such a fantastic vocabulary upgrade for our listeners.
Why is that a step up from just saying tired?
Well, when we all first begin learning English, one of the very first adjectives we learn is tired. It's a useful word.
Very useful.
But then when we feel more than tired, our beginner instinct is just to stack words on top of each other. We say very tired or very, very tired.
Right, but repeating the word very doesn't actually communicate a stronger emotion, does it?
No, it feels a little flat. It doesn't have any punch to it.
It's completely flat. But the word exhausted carries real physical weight.
It does. If you look at the root of the word, it literally means to draw all the contents out of something.
Like a car's exhaust pipe pushing out air?
Exactly like that. When you say you are exhausted, you are saying your energy tank is completely empty. There's zero fuel left. It's a feeling deep in your bones.
Oh, wow. So by choosing the word exhausted, Emily expresses an intense physical state with just one single powerful word.
Yeah, and it changes how you speak, too. You can't really say the word exhausted quickly. You almost have to breathe it out. I was exhausted.
You really do. So if you are listening to this and you want to instantly upgrade your story next Monday, try swapping out very tired for exhausted. It makes you sound so much more natural.
It's a great tip.
Okay, so we've got Emily's active Saturday out in fresh air. Now let's look at Paul. Paul's Saturday is the complete opposite.
It really is. He describes his Saturday as productive.
It's a beautiful pivot by the creators of the source material. Paul stayed entirely inside, he stayed home, and he focused on chores.
And once again, we get this wonderful list of specific details from him.
What does he say he did?
Well, Paul cleaned the floors, he did the laundry, he went to the supermarket. And to finish the day, he cooked salmon for dinner.
And what was the result of all that?
He proudly announces to Emily that his apartment is very clean.
Honestly, that is a classic, relatable weekend for so many adults.
It is the reality of being a grown-up.
Totally. But I want us to really stop and look at this concept of the word productive.
Let's do it.
In this specific context, the word productive is mapped specifically to completing domestic tasks. It means scrubbing the bathroom, washing your socks, and organizing your life at home.
That's spot on. Because, in a corporate business setting, if your boss says productive, they mean you've finished a big project or increased sales.
Right, it's about making money.
But in everyday conversational English, when you are standing by the coffee machine talking about Saturday, a productive weekend almost universally means you handled your life admin.
You washed your clothes, you cleaned your kitchen, and you bought your groceries.
Yeah, you produced order out of chaos in your living space.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly useful social definition for learners to grasp.
But, I've got to push back on this a little bit.
Oh, how so?
Well, let's really unpack this idea of being productive. Paul vacuums his floors and cooks a piece of salmon, and society says, yes, Paul was productive. But what about Emily? Emily woke up at 7 a.m. She marched up a mountain for 3 hours. Isn't that productive for her physical health?
That's a really good point.
I mean, it's fascinating to me how we use the word productive specifically to mean chores, while exercise and nature are just labeled as active.
That is a highly observant point. It reveals a huge amount about how our modern society views work. versus rest.
Yeah, we have this deeply ingrained habit of linking the word productive to tasks that we probably don't want to do.
Things we are obligated to do. Chores feel like work. Vacuuming feels like labor. So when we finish them, we feel we have earned the title of productive.
Exactly. But hiking, on the other hand, feels like a choice. It's a hobby. It's joyful. So we just call it active.
And for the language learner, this isn't just a vocabulary lesson, it's a cultural map.
How do you mean?
Well, if you tell an English speaker you had a productive weekend, their brain will immediately picture you carrying a laundry basket or pushing a shopping cart.
They won't picture you on a mountain.
They will absolutely not picture you climbing a mountain in hiking boots. The word implies domestic chores.
I love looking at it that way. I like to think of these weekend types like outfits you wear.
Oh, the outfit analogy. Go on.
Well, Emily woke up and put on the nature outfit. She strapped on her hiking boots, grabbed her backpack, and embraced the outdoors.
Okay, then Paul.
Paul woke up and put on the work shirt. He put on his yellow rubber cleaning gloves and grabbed the mop. Both of them had very busy, tiring days, but the energy of the stories is totally different.
It's a great way to visualize it.
And before we move on to part 2, what happens to them on Sunday, I have to point out one more specific detail from Paul's day.
The dinner.
Yes. He didn't just cook dinner, he cooked salmon.
Yes. Why salmon? Why not just say, I made dinner?
I feel like there's a reason.
There is. Mentioning the salmon serves two brilliant purposes in the source material. First, as we just discussed with Emily's chicken sandwiches, it adds that vivid sensory detail.
Right, you can smell the fish cooking, you can see the pink color on the plate.
But secondly, culturally, cooking a piece of salmon implies a nice reward. Paul worked hard. He spent hours cleaning the floors and carrying laundry.
So the salmon is like a prize.
Exactly. The salmon represents a proper, healthy, somewhat premium meal to celebrate a highly productive day. It makes his story feel satisfying and complete.
It's the reward at the end of the chore tunnel.
Exactly.
So we have this perfect Saturday dichotomy: active versus productive, outdoors versus indoors, nature outfit versus work shirt.
But then we smoothly transition into episode 2 of the source material, and things change.
Yes, what happens when Sunday morning rolls around? Because Paul and Emily experience a complete 180-degree shift in their energy.
It's a total reversal. The narrative structure here is brilliant. The characters switch their energy levels.
Right, so the highly active mountain climber becomes intensely social, and our productive floor-scrubbing friend becomes wonderfully lazy.
It creates a wonderful, realistic balance. It teaches the listener that human beings are complex. You don't have to be just one thing all weekend.
So let's unpack Paul's lazy Sunday first.
Okay, let's look at the details. He woke up at 10 a.m., and he specifically highlights this fact to Emily: no alarm clock.
Oh, that is the best feeling.
It really is. Then he read a book about Italy, and he watched a football match on TV.
Nice.
But here's the twist. His team lost. Still, despite the loss, he tells Emily he had a great time resting.
The contrast here with his busy Saturday is just masterful. On Saturday, he was relentlessly focused on tasks. On Sunday, his very first detail is 10:00 a.m., no alarm clock.
That instantly tells the listener that the pace of life is completely slowed down. The urgency is gone.
And then we arrive at what I think is a brilliant pedagogical move by the creators of English Coffee Break.
You're talking about the football match, right?
Exactly. Paul watched his favorite team play, and his team lost the game. That is technically a negative event.
Yes, it is.
But he immediately follows it by saying his day was still great. This is the beauty of describing an imperfect day.
I am so glad you brought that up. Why do you think describing an imperfect day is such an important skill for language learners?
Well, because when people learn a new language, they often feel this intense pressure to tell simple, flawlessly happy stories.
Right, like, I went to the park. The weather was good. I was happy. The end.
Exactly. They keep everything 100% positive because it feels safer grammatically. But real life isn't a children's book. Real life is complicated.
It is. Teams lose. It rains. Things happen.
By sharing that his team lost, Paul sounds like a real, authentic human being. And by putting those two ideas together, my team lost, but my day was great, he demonstrates how to describe mixed emotions in a simple way.
It is a vital skill for natural conversation. It shows the learner that you can safely include a negative detail inside a positive story without, ruining the conversation.
It makes him so much more relatable. If he just said everything was perfect, there's no conversation there. But saying my team lost gives Emily a chance to react.
She can say, oh no, that's too bad. It invites interaction.
And there's also this lovely sensory contrast in his day that we should talk about.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, a contrast the sensory experience of a quiet morning waking up naturally, reading a book about Italy, with the potential noise of the afternoon.
Ah, the football match.
Right. A lazy morning is a very quiet, peaceful, almost romantic image. But a football match on TV, that involves shouting, whistleblowing, and excitement.
He experienced completely different levels of rest, and in doing so, he kind of reclaims the word lazy.
How so?
Well, in many contexts, lazy is used as a harsh criticism. It means someone who refuses to work, someone who is irresponsible.
Yeah, it usually has a negative vibe.
But in the specific context of a weekend, a lazy Sunday is a celebrated goal. It is a deeply positive thing. It's the necessary physical and mental recovery after a highly productive Saturday.
Okay, so Paul is recovering, resting, and reading about Italy. Now let's look over at Emily. Her Sunday is the exact opposite of quiet.
She trades her peaceful mountain for a social Sunday.
Let's unpack her details. She attended her niece's 5th birthday party.
And this is where those sensory details come rushing back in. Paul asks her what the party was like and if it was loud.
And what does she say?
She answers, yes, very loud. There were many children, games, and a big chocolate cake. I gave her some colorful pens as a gift. And she sums it up by saying it was a happy family day.
The power of sensory adjectives is just on full display here. Notice that she uses incredibly simple vocabulary. Loud, big, colorful.
Simple but highly effective.
Exactly. You don't need a dictionary to understand them, but they instantly transport you into that room. You hear the high-pitched screams of the children. You see the massive, sticky chocolate cake.
This is exactly what we want our listeners to absorb. When you're constructing your own weekend story, try to consciously include one detail for the ears, like loud or quiet.
That's a great tip.
And one detail for the eyes, like big or colorful or dark. Engaging the senses brings your English to life.
It makes the listener feel like they were right there with you.
But it brings up a really interesting question. Why mention the colorful pens?
Right. Emily could have easily just said, I gave her a gift. We already know she's at a 5th birthday party. It is obvious there will be gifts.
So why make the specific choice to say colorful pens? Why is that tiny detail so powerful?
Well, it's about reducing the cognitive load for the person listening to you.
Explain that a bit more.
If you just say, I gave her a gift, the listener's brain has to pause and do the work of imagining what that gift might be. Is it a stuffed animal? Is it a toy truck? Is it clothes?
That takes mental effort.
Right. But when you say colorful pens, you instantly hand the listener a high-definition image. You do the imagination work for them.
It also shows Emily's thoughtfulness as an aunt, which is a nice narrative touch.
Definitely. And pedagogically, for the English learner, it proves our earlier point again. Specific nouns like colorful pens, chocolate cake, salmon are the true secret to sounding fluent.
You are using basic beginner-level words, but you are using them with laser precision.
It's such a comforting realization, honestly. You do not need a massive vocabulary, you just need a precise one. So, looking at Emily and Paul, we now have a complete picture of the weekend experience. We have the active day, the productive day, the lazy day, and the social day.
But knowing the vocabulary is only half the battle, isn't it?
It really is. Which brings us to part 3 of the source material, where the English Coffee Break hosts step back and explicitly teach the language mechanics behind these stories.
Because having the words in your head doesn't mean you can easily get them out of your mouth on Monday morning.
Exactly. You have to understand the mechanical structure of how to put those words together, and you have to cultivate the right psychological mindset.
So you can actually speak them out loud without freezing up. Let's talk about the mechanics first. The golden grammar rule for weekend stories.
The big one. The past tense.
Yes. If you want to talk about Saturday and Sunday, you have to master this.
The clear, explicit instruction in the source is to completely stop saying I go and firmly start saying I went. For example, I went hiking, I went to a party, I went to the supermarket.
Moving from the present tense to the past tense is, without a doubt, the single biggest hurdle for language learners when they're recounting a story.
Why is that? I mean, on paper, it seems so simple.
It does seem simple on paper.
So why is it so incredibly hard for our brains to just switch from go to went when we are actually speaking?
It comes down to how the brain learns and stores information under pressure. Think about when we first start learning English.
Okay.
We spend months and months living entirely in the present tense. I am, I go, I eat, I sleep. We write it down, we repeat it in class, we practice it hundreds of times.
So it becomes a habit.
The present tense becomes our brain's default setting. It is a deeply worn pathway in the mind. So imagine it's Monday morning. Your colleague asks about your weekend.
And suddenly your brain is under social pressure.
Exactly. You have to perform. And under stress, the human brain always reaches for the most familiar, most practiced tool, the default setting.
Wow, so the learner opens their mouth and says, on Saturday, I go to the park.
Yes. The conscious brain knows it's grammatically incorrect, but the habit is so strong that the present tense just slips out.
That makes total sense. I like to think of this I went structure, like the metal chassis of a car on an assembly line.
Oh, another analogy. Let's hear it.
Well, it's just a boring gray metal frame. I went. But you absolutely need that solid, strong frame before you can add the shiny red paint, the leather seats, and the cool stereo.
And those shiny details are your vocabulary.
Right. The chicken sandwiches, the colorful pens. But if you don't have the solid I went chassis, the car just falls apart the moment you try to drive it.
That is a brilliant way to put it. So how do we fix this? How do we build that chassis?
The source explains that you build it through sheer, focused repetition to create muscle memory.
The mouth literally needs to get used to the physical shape of the words.
Yes, repeating the structure I went activity over and over. The goal is to stop trying to invent a brand new sentence structure every single time you open your mouth.
You memorize this one simple block. I went. Treat those two words as a single, unbreakable unit.
And once your tongue and lips get used to firing off I went, automatically the cognitive load drops, right?
Oh, it's significantly. And then the rest of your specific details will follow easily.
But let's be realistic here. We are human. What happens when you're under pressure and you make a mistake anyway?
It's gonna happen.
What happens when you accidentally use the present tense? This brings us to what I believe is the most liberating, golden piece of advice for anyone learning anything.
Let me guess. Confidence over perfection.
Yes. The core advice. Paul gives this brilliant reassurance in the source. He simply says, don't be afraid of mistakes.
And to prove it, the source gives a very comforting, real-world example, the pizza example.
Oh, I love the pizza example.
If someone asks about your weekend and you make a mistake and say, I eat pizza, instead of the correct past tense, I ate pizza, people will still completely understand you.
This is where it gets really interesting for me, because this idea completely shifts the entire goal of learning a language.
How do you mean?
So often, we are trained by the school system to believe that the goal of language is to pass a strict grammar test.
Oh, absolutely. We falsely believe that if we use the wrong verb tense, the conversation will instantly crash.
Right. We think the other person will laugh at us and communication will just fail. But Paul's pizza example proves that this fear is mostly an illusion.
It is an incredibly freeing concept because communication in the real world relies heavily on context.
Context is everything.
It is. If it's Monday morning at 9:00 a.m. and you are standing by the water cooler talking about Saturday night and you say, I eat pizza, the listener's brain uses context clues.
They know you were talking about the past.
Right. They're not going to look around the office and you're eating an invisible pizza right now. They instantly understand the context.
So your message is 100% successful, even if the grammar is flawed.
Exactly.
I want to talk directly to you, our listener, right now. If you are learning English or any language, please embrace this mindset.
It is the secret to actually enjoying the language.
The ultimate goal of language isn't to be a walking dictionary. The goal is human connection. It's about sharing a little piece of your life with another person.
If you stay silent because you're afraid you might use the wrong verb tense, you lose that human connection.
You remain a stranger. But if you speak up with confidence, even with a mistake, you build a relationship.
The other person doesn't care about your grammar, really. They're just happy you're sharing your story with them.
That is precisely the right attitude. Now, obviously, you should always try to practice the correct past tense.
Yes, try to say, I ate pizza because improvement is good. But you must remove the paralyzing fear of failure. Separate the act of practicing from the crushing pressure of perfection.
Aim for the past tense, but don't panic if the present tense slips out. Just keep talking.
And that brings us to the final, masterful piece of advice we can take from this source material. The Monday icebreaker.
Ah, yes. The phrase. The source urges listeners to use the phrase, how was your weekend, when seeing friends on Monday.
It's a deeply empowering way to approach social situations. Think about it, we started this whole deep dive talking about the panic and anxiety of being asked this question.
Right, the heart-beating, mind-blanking panic.
But now, the advice flips the script. Take control of the situation. Don't passively wait in fear to be asked. Be the brave person who asks the question first.
That completely shifts the power dynamic.
It entirely does.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger psychological picture, how was your weekend, is not actually a question seeking a detailed factual police report of your activities.
No, nobody wants an hour-by-hour breakdown.
It is a cultural key. It's an icebreaker. It is a tool designed to unlock friendly, warm relationships in a cold workplace or, a stressful school environment.
When you look someone in the eye and ask this question, you are implicitly saying, I care about you as a person outside of this professional setting.
Exactly. You are saying, I view you as a whole human being, not just a coworker. It is a vital, necessary tool for building a social life and making friends in a new language.
It demonstrates empathy and interest. And here is the best part, because we've spent this time breaking down the structure. Wait, because you now understand the concepts of active, productive, lazy, and social days.
Right, the matrix we discussed.
Because you know that matrix when you ask someone, how was your weekend? You are fully prepared to understand their answer.
You know how to actively listen for their specific details.
Yes, you can hear whether they spent their weekend wearing the nature outfit or the work shirt.
And just like that, you transition from someone who is just trying to survive the conversation into someone who is actively, joyfully participating in a cultural ritual.
It's a huge shift. So let's bring all these incredible pieces together as we wrap up. We have taken a deep, microscopic look at everyday conversation today.
We really went word by word.
And if you're listening, you now possess a clear, highly effective 4-part matrix to build your own weekend stories.
That matrix is your map. You can have an active day where your focus is on physical movement, effort, and enjoying the outdoors, like Emily's hike.
Or you can have a productive day where you focus your energy on chores, cleaning, and organizing your personal space, like Paul's salmon and clean floors.
You can enjoy a lazy day where you permit yourself to rest, read, and mentally recover, even if your football team loses.
Or you can have a social day focusing your energy on family, friends, and loud, colorful gatherings, like a 5th birthday party.
And to tell these stories effectively, you truly only need 2 main tools.
First, master your grammatical chassis, the simple past tense structure, I went.
Practice it in your car. Practice it in the shower. Repeat it until your mouth does it automatically.
Second, use highly specific details. Don't be vague. Don't just say you ate food. Tell them you cooked salmon.
Don't just say you bought a gift. Tell them you found colorful pens. Those small, simple, vivid words are what will make your story stick in their memory.
And above everything else, carry Paul's advice with you. Do not be afraid of mistakes. The warm connection you create by sharing your life is infinitely more valuable than the perfect grammar you might use to tell it.
Well said. It's interesting. The original source asked its audience a question at the end. They asked viewers to comment if they went out or stayed home.
That's a great call to action. It highlights just how universal this topic really is.
It does. No matter where you live on Earth, everyone experiences that exact same transition from the freedom of the weekend back into the structure of the work week.
Everyone has a story to tell on Monday morning, whether they climbed to the top of a windy mountain or just stayed happily curled up on their sofa reading a book.
It is a shared global rhythm, perfectly captured through simple, intentional vocabulary.
But I want to leave you, our listener, with a final, slightly provocative thought today. Something for you to ponder and mull over on your own that builds on what we've talked about.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What's the thought?
Notice how every single type of weekend we discussed today, even Paul's famously lazy Sunday, still required an action.
Oh, right.
Paul actively read a book about Italy. He actively engaged with a football match on television. Even his rest involved doing something specific.
That's very true. He was engaged in activities, even if those activities required very low physical energy.
So it raises a really fascinating question about modern life. Is it actually possible to have a weekend where you truly, literally do nothing?
Absolute zero activity.
Exactly. And if you somehow achieved that, if you did absolutely nothing for 48 hours, how would you possibly describe that experience to your friends on Monday morning using the English vocabulary we just explored?
How do you tell an engaging story about a completely empty day? That is quite the puzzle.
Think about that puzzle the next time Monday morning rolls around. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep practicing your past tense, keep sharing your specific stories, and have a wonderful, productive week.
Keep learning, don't fear the mistakes, and we will talk to you next time.